Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Shivana, Kiran, Ravina, Sahu, Santosh, Ajay, Nikita, Alok, Neha, Gaurav. Good morning, all of you. Let me just share my screen. We will be covering the remaining topics of the chapter 9 for auditing and ethics. Good morning, Anmol. Students, first of all, good morning, Yuvraj, Mansi, Saipa. I want to discuss with you some questions because in the last session we couldn't cover that part, how the questions will be asked in the exam. Good morning, Neha. So the parts which we have covered till now, is audit of sole proprietorship, then partnership, then LLP, after that charitable institution, education institution, cinema halls, clubs. So many parts we have covered till now, hospitals and hotels. Today we will be covering the next part. But before that, I want to discuss some questions that were asked in the previous sessions or in the RTPs so that you can get a knowledge how the questions will be asked in your exam. This can be in the form of true and false or MCQ types or direct questions descriptive. Is it clear? So first of all, let me just start with the question parts and then you can post your queries from the topics which we have covered till now. I will be answering that. Only after that, I will be proceeding to the next topic. So regarding the hospitals part, which we have covered, so the questions can be asked in this form, direct questions. Is it visible to you, students? The question was asked, T&C Chartered Accountant, a partnership firm, is appointed as auditor of the treatment of hospital run by the Smile Foundation Charitable Trust over and above the receipts of the treatment of the patients. Understand and read carefully. Over and above the receipts of the treatment of patients during the year, the trust received the donations. The first part is the treatment of patients. The second is the receipts from donations from various donors to treat the COVID-19 patients and also incurred some capital expenditure. The third point, read carefully what the question is asking. The first point was receipts from patient. Second is the received donations. And the third point is asking about the capital expenditure. Capital expenditure for further development of the hospital. Some of the investment income. Fourth point, some of the investment income. And income tax. Fifth point, income tax refund, TDS, was deducted. What are, now the question is asking, what are the special points to be considered by Messrs. T and Company while auditing such transactions of the treatment of the hospitals? So, as an auditor, in these points, which are specifically asked in the exam, what the auditor will pay special consideration on that. Regarding the receipts of the patients, second is the donations part, third will be capital expenditure, then fourth is investment income, and then the TDS, which was deducted. So, we have covered in this. The first part will cover register of patients regarding the receipts from the patients. So, we will be covering the register of patients part. And for the investment, how the dividend and the interest income has been recorded that should have been received. And for the remaining parts of the capital expenditure, was that prior sanctioned or authorized by proper authority or not? This will be covering in point number 6. And regarding the TDS part, grant and TDS, you will be checking as an auditor. Yes, Neha. That TDS deducted at source has been claimed or not. These are the direct questions asked by the institute. Clear? Students? In the same way, we will be covering the questions asked from the hotel industry audit. So as we covered, the pilferage was the main problem in the hotel industry. This was the inherent limitations. Yes, perfect, Anmol. You can refer your study material if you are facing any problem. I am talking about the other students. So the hotel industry pilferage was the one of the major issues, petty theft. So the question was asked from the RTP, November 22, May 22. Pilferage is the one of the greatest problem in any hotel industry. The importance of internal control. Explain. Pilferage. I told you pilferage will happen. This was the inherent limitations for the hotel industry. But what is the importance for internal control in this regard? So we have to answer for the this point, internal control. First point, the answer will be internal control. We will, as an auditor, the auditor will check the trading accounts were properly prepared or not. He will do the analysis for the same. The second point will you will be writing about the KOT, kitchen order tickets, test check on them, and the third about the GST paid on the restaurant bills. This is the part of internal control. Clear, students? The second question in the hotel industry will be, you have been appointed as an auditor of ABC Hotel, a 3-star hotel, for the financial year 21-22. As an auditor, what are the special points that need to be considered in verifying the inventories? Again, direct questions. No problem, Sushil. I am just discussing the past year question papers. Questions. Verifying the inventory in nature of food and beverages. Direct question on the inventory part. So the answer will be this. Third point. I have bifurcated in the points so that you can retain it as well after understanding. Carry out the test check. Keep the lock. And no unauthorized person can get into the store. Check the movement, how the inventory are being purchased, how they are issued to respective department. Check the movement. And if any valuation has been done by any independent valuer, then the auditor, statutory auditor, need to check the amount, satisfy himself that the amount recorded in the balance sheet of the hotels with regard to inventory are correct. And last, physical inventory. Physical inventory is the 4 we will be doing whenever we find any inventory or asset question, we will be answering with the physical inventory. This is the common point. Auditor will check the physical existence of the inventory as well, apart from the checking with the books of accounts. Clear, students, till now? Share the PDF. Which PDF, Srinivasan? I will be sharing this PPT with you after the completion of the topics. Don't worry about that. I have shared some charts already. I hope you have get that. So now I am proceeding with the today's topic. Just a minute. Is it clear till now, students? How the questions will be asked? And today we are covering, starting with the topic NGO, audit of the NGO. You will find this on the page number 27. Is it visible to you, students? I will be sharing the PPT with you. I have answered, Ruturaj. I have shown you the questions and also the answer part from our PPT. Ruturaj, I have told the point number as well. So you need not to find and waste your time on finding the answers. I have discussed with the points. Which point will be covered in the answers? Okay, Ruturaj? Okay. Now we are starting with the audit of the NGO, non-government organizations, and the your study material. It is covered in the 9.27. So in the previous session, we started with the charitable institutions. Charitable institutions were covered as a trust, society, or Section 8 companies, non-profit organizations, NPOs. Today we are covering the uncharitable institution. Yes, Yuvraj. I will be uploading today, Yuvraj. I have uploaded some parts a day before yesterday, and for full PPT, I will be uploading today. You can find it. So the NGO. NGO, what is the NGO? Non-government organizations. They work independent. As the name says, they work as independent entities. But they are not required to get themselves registered. But if NGOs, non-government organizations, what they do, they can indulge in the charitable institutions, charitable activities like helping the poor in the education, or for arranging the donation camp or marathon, etc. And they raise their fund and they utilize those collected fund in the various activity. For example, they can use their fund for creating awareness on the various social issues, in environment preservations as well. So the scope of the NGO is very wide. And an important point to note here is NGOs are not required to get themselves registered with any institutions. But if they want to get them registered, they can register in these three forms, which we have already covered in the previous session. In the session of the charitable institutions, we started our previous session with this slide only. So I am again repeating it here with the context to NGO. So incorporation, if the NGO want to get themselves registered, they can get them registered as a trust under the Indian Trust Act 1882. If they want to get them registered as society, so they can get themselves registered in the Societies Act. If as a company, so they can get themselves registered in the companies form. But there was some catch that these two acts will be applicable whether the NGOs are registered as trust, society, or the Section 8 company. Which were the two acts? First was the Income Tax Act, another was the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. What was the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act? That was if any charitable institutions or the NGO from the current part is receiving any donation from the foreign, if the NGO is receiving any foreign contribution, then this act will be applied. Then the provision of this act will also be applicable apart from these common acts. Is it clear? So the NGO, non-government organizations. Now we are starting with the content. We have understand the legal formation of the NGOs. The non-government organizations are generally incorporated as society, we covered in our chart, or trust, or under any other law, or as the Section 8 of the Companies Act 2013. We already covered this part in our chart. Apart from two other acts were also there, the Income Tax Act and the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. As I told you, the NGO are not required. None of the above mentioned act warrant, means make mandatory registration under them for an NGO, but they get, if they want to get them registered, they can incorporate as they want, as a trust, as a society, or as a company. But if NGO is created as a trust, relates to immovable property worth more than 100 rupees, 100 rupees. This is talking about the 1880, where the trust was created, and the regulations of 1908 read with the section of the Transfer of Property Act 1882 must be complied with, and the registration of the trust become mandatory. What is the point saying? As we covered in our previous session, what is the trust meaning? Understand carefully the meaning of this point. Students, pay attention here. As we cover, understand here with the example, this point. if the NGO is created as a trust and trust relates to immovable property. What is the meaning of that? Earlier in the earlier session, I told you the meaning of author and trustees. Who was the author of the trust? Who wants to transfer the any property or any asset of? Author was the person who wishes to transfer his property under a trust to some persons. Those persons are called the trustees. If author wants to transfer his asset under the provision of trust, so to whom he is transferring his assets, these are the called the trustees, and the person who is transferring his assets, those are called the authors. So if the transfer of assets, the assets which is being transferred in this act, if that asset is in the form of immovable property, then the NGO will be required to register. Is it clear, students? As we covered in the earlier session, the author, that one person wishes to transfer his asset or property under a provision of trust to whom that asset is being transferred so that they can manage those property very well. Those persons are called the trustees, and the person who transferred the asset is called the author who creates the trust. So whatever we are talking about the asset, which is being transferred in this provision, if that assets is in the form of immovable property and worth more than 100 rupees, then the NGO will be liable to get them registered under the Trust Act. Clear, students? Is it clear till now, students? Okay, Jay. And what about the others? The next portion will be in some states, such as the state of Maharashtra, Gujarat, where Public Trust Act have been, and a Bombay Trust Act, etc. All the charitable trusts have to be registered under the specific Public Trust Act. This was the same as we covered in the last session. If there is any specific state act for the trust, then that state act will be applicable to that trust. If not, then the central act will be applicable. And the Income Tax Act and the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act are the common. NGOs registered under the Companies Act. Again, I am repeating, there were three. As NGOs can be incorporated as a trust, as society, and the third form was under the Section 8 of the Companies Act. So this is the related to that. The paragraph is saying NGOs registered under the Companies Act 2013 must maintain, if that NGO is incorporated as the Section 8 of the Companies Act 13, that NGO must maintain the books of accounts under the accrual basis as required by the section of 128 of the Companies Act. Companies Act 2013 requires to maintain the books of accounts on only accrual basis. So if the NGO is incorporated as the company, then this requirement will become mandatory. And what if and the non-compliance of the provision of the Companies Act, okay, but the NGO which are not registered under the Companies Act allowed to maintain either on the accrual basis or the cash basis. This is very simple. If I want to cover it in just one sentence, if the entity is registered under particular provision as a trust, as a society, or the company, that entity, that NGO must follow that provision of the respective act. If it is not registered, then it is free. Clear, students? Now the sources. What are the sources and applications of the funds of the NGO? First, the donation. As we covered, the donations are the main part of the revenue. Donations, grant are the financial assistance in the nature of promoters' contribution. What is the meaning of promoters' contribution? I think you have heard this term promoter in the company as well. Promoters are the persons who start the incorporation of the company. In the same way, promoter is the who start the process, who is the main persons to invoke these agencies, to start these agencies. Clear, students? So donations and grant received in the nature of promoters contribution. For example, we 3-4 people like Jay, Vaishali, Yuvraj and me, we think and Neha, we want to start a NGO naming ABC and NGO. So we 5-6 people will be considered as the promoters for that NGO. And whatever contribution we put in the NGO, that is called the promoters contribution. Clear, students? What is the meaning of promoters? Who started the organization? And contribution of them will be considered as the promoters contribution. Second will be, and a main source of fund will be voluntary contributions, like who are not the part of the, like Sangeeta want to pay 2 lakh rupees to our ABC NGO, then this will be considered as the voluntary contribution. And the third point will be contribution or grant towards a revolving fund. We will be covering in detail what is the revolving fund, donation and the grant received for acquisition of specific funds. For example, Mohammed gave us 5 lakh rupees for constructing particular part of the building of hospital building or any other, for purchasing the fixed assets for the, specifically for the purchase of fixed assets for the NGO purpose, for fulfilling the objects of the NGO. So that is received a specific part, specific conditions of, imposed by the Mohammed, that this part will, this my donation, my contribution will be used only for purchasing the specific fixed assets which has been specified by him. The last, contribution in kind, directly you purchase something and donate it to the NGO. Other than in cash or bank mode, you purchase something and directly donated those assets to the NGO. And the area, what will be the applications of the fund? The establishment cost like PF, ESI, other admin expenses, and maintenance of the repair and maintenance of the office building of the NGO, any other projects, program. For example, there is a blood donation camp or the marathon organized by, or any sports event organized by the NGO. So whatever the expenses are there with regard to that event, that project, that will be considered here. Any charity for any expenses that is being expensed over the charity program, and donations and contributions given. NGO receive the contribution as well as they give the donations and contribution to the other NGOs and the needy beneficiaries also. Is it clear till now, students? You can find this topic on the 9.27 page. I hope you are keeping your study material with you. Promoter, Ramnivas, promoter is related to, if I want to incorporate an entity and I have the idea of that entity. Clear? That is called the promoter. I am starting some entity and I am the only person. I have the idea of that entity, that I want to start the company XYZ. I want to start the NGO. So I will be considered, and I am putting first money, initial money for the incorporation of that entity. That is called the promoter. But the author is related to exclusively for the trust. If I want to transfer my property, if I want to transfer my building under the trust arrangement, so I will be considered as the author. Is it clear, Ramnivas? Next, we will be covering in detail. In kinds means other than cash. We will be covering Smita. Other than cash, but the main source of the funds includes grants and donations and fundraising program and advertisement, fees from the members, technical assistance, and subscription, gifts, sales of the produce and publications. These are the major activities. But what are the specifically classification of these source and applications? We will be covering there, which we have covered in the chart in the short form. Now we are covering in detail. About first point was about the promoter's contribution. So how the treatment in the accounts of this promoter contribution. Read carefully. Donations and grant received in the nature of promoters contribution. Like as I said, we three, four people, Neha, Jay, and other persons and me, Vaishali, we think of starting an NGO, ABC, and we put the money. So we are the promoters, and whatever the amount we give it in the NGO, that is called the promoters contribution. The capital, this is as in the company you read the company, the capital of the company. So in the NGO, that is called the promoter's contribution. These are the capital receipts. Obviously, this is the nature of capital, we are initiating something and putting the money into that. These are the capital of that particular entity. So this is the capital receipt, and obviously the capital will always shown on the liability side of the balance sheet. These may be either in the form of corpus contribution. Is called the in the charitable institution students. The capital word is used as the corpus. So the corpus contribution or the capital contribution is same. In the NGOs, in the charitable institutions, we use the corpus word instead of the capital. Therefore, the promoter's contribution, corpus contributions, or contribution towards a revolving fund. We will be covering in the next portion what is the revolving fund in detail. A contribution made towards the capital or the corpus is known as corpus contribution. Already told you. The donors are generally required to specify whether the donation given by him shall form part of the corpus of the NGO. Such contributions are generally given with the reference to the total funds required by the NGO. As I told you, Mohammed gave us some fund with special condition that you will be using this fund only for that specified purpose. So this will form the part of the corpus, not the income, because he is putting some condition. I cannot use his fund for the general uses of the entity for the NGO. So this will be form part of the corpus of the NGO and not the normal revenue, not the normal receipts. Read it again. The donors are generally required to specify. The donor will specify whether the fund given by me will be using, NGO will be using in the general purpose or for the specific purpose. If that donor specify that my funds will be used only for that specified purpose, then that fund will be considered as the part of corpus and not as the receipt part. Clear, students? This is very common. If the donor is putting any condition that that fund will be part of the corpus and not as the normal receipt. Students, clear this point? And the next point is, you will be reading in your income tax part, but I am briefing here. Section 11, subsection 1, clause D of the Income Tax Act 1961 also state that income in the form of voluntary contribution. For example, Bhumika paid 10 lakh rupees to the NGO as her own wish. She wants to contribute towards the NGO so that NGO can work well without any financial constraint. Made with a specific direction. She put and condition that you will be using these funds only towards the awareness program or the marathon program or particular blood donation camp or any medical camp. She imposes a restriction that I am giving you 10 lakh rupees, but you will be using these funds only for that blood donation camp. Then same part, what will be the treatment? That form the part of the corpus. Any contribution, any voluntary contribution, if comes with specified condition restriction for its uses, will form the part of the corpus and not the income of that particular NGO. Students, clear? We are talking about the terms as well as the accounting treatment. The auditor need to check while auditing the audit of the NGO. Clear, students? The next point about the what is the revolving. You must have heard the revolving means that is revolving around the people, The object of contribution or grant toward the revolving fund to rotate the amount by giving temporary loans from the fund to other NGO and beneficiaries of their project, and then recover the loan so as to give temporary loans to. Okay, Kadambari, good. And so on. However, okay, let me just explain the meaning of revolving fund. Then we will be learning about the interest treatment on the same. So what is the revolving fund? For example, we registered an NGO. Okay, NGO and the members are the Neha, me, Jay, Bhumika. We are the four promoters for the same. And another is DEF NGO. Okay. Now there is a Kadambari, Smita, Vaishali, Ramnivas. Those are the members for DEF NGO. Now our ABC NGO received a donation of rupees 20 lakh. We received a donation, and understand, pay attention here. I think I have answered Ramnivas for the same. Promoter and I think I have again get. So an ABC NGO received 20 lakh. Now these 20 lakh, I being a member of ABC NGO on the DF NGO for temporary person as a loan. I want to give these and out of 20 lakh, 5 lakh rupees, 5 lakh to the DEF NGO so that they can continue their charity or awareness activities. They can accomplish their objects of their NGO. So these funds, and again DEF NGO, out of these 5 lakh, donate or give as a loan 2 lakh rupees to another NGO. So particular fund is being revolved among the various NGOs by giving as a purpose of the loan, temporary loan. Not, I am not giving these 5 lakh rupees as a permanent. I am only giving a loan to the DEF, and DEF NGO again further giving 2 lakh rupees out of these 5 lakh rupees as a loan to any another NGO. What is the purpose? If one NGO is getting very good and a handsome amount of the donations or charity, so that NGO can give another amount out of this amount to another NGO so that another NGOs can also accomplish their objectives towards the charity, awareness, whatever the purpose is. So this is the revolving. The funds is being rotated among the various NGOs, not as a permanent income source, as a temporary loans. Clear, students? Yes, specific if there any Rituraj, any condition is being imposed, that donation, if that particular contribution or donation is for specific purpose, not in the general nature, then always form part of the corpus and not the income. So revolving now, if I am giving 5 lakh rupees to DEF NGO, I will be charging some interest on that. This is clear, common. So what will be the treatment of the interest income for the ABC NGO? Now we are reading this. Any interest earned from the beneficiary or the such temporary loans from the revolving fund, we are charging, say example, 10% on a 2% or 5%, whatever the amount. So whatever the interest is coming, how the accounting treatment will be done? Either added back to the fund or credited to income and expenditure account. If the interest amount is 10,000, say example, 10,000 rupees is the interest income, I can add back to the 20 lakh, whatever the loan amount was, whatever the our donation was, or I can add this 10,000 rupees to the income and expenditure. I can make it part of that particular revolving fund, or I can treat it as a normal receipt of the NGO. But who will decide the restrictions imposed by the donor? The restriction imposed by the donor or the rules and regulation of particular NGO. What will be the treatment? This will depend upon the any restriction imposed by the donor or the particular rules, internal rules and regulation of that NGO. And the next point is donation and grant received for acquisition. As we received 5 lakh rupees from the Mohammed, and the Mohammed said that you will be using this only for the purchasing of the particular fixed assets. So this is the for particular those grant whose very condition is that NGO accepting them should purchase if it is in the form of furniture, or construct if it is form of the building, or otherwise acquire the asset which the grant is given. Many times NGO receive contribution in kind, like for vehicle, and a vehicle is being contributed for the NGO, office equipment, any building, any property is being given other than the cash in kind. They directly purchased that vehicle, asset, or building and donated to the NGO. I think one student already asked this, so I answered earlier also. Yes, Srinivasan, regulators will be like if it is registered as a trust, then the trust provisions will be invoked. And in case of company, the section provisions of the Companies Act, and other than society and income tax and foreign contribution act are the common. All these, if NGOs are registered under the provision, if not, so they are free. NGOs are free, as the name suggests, non-government organizations. If they are not registered under any provisions, so they are free. Clear, students? Just give me a minute. Okay, student, is it clear till now? Till now, we covered the sources. What are the sources? And now we are covering the application. Whatever the contribution, whatever the amount, donations have been received by the NGO, how they will utilize the same. Is my voice clear, students? Okay. So what will be the applications for the same? The application of fund of the NGO include establishment cost, office administration cost, maintenance expense, program and project expense, blood donation camp, any marathon has been organized by the NGOs, and the charity donation, as we took in the example, the NGOs also rotate their fund. So whatever the charity or contribution, if they are directly giving, not as a loan, they can donate as well to the other NGOs. The objective is so that they can create awareness, they can accomplish the objectives, whatever the objects are the of that particular NGO. This can be in the form of charity, or they want to give medical relief and help the poor, or preserving the environment, or spreading the awareness on social issues. So many types. Clear, students? And this is the diagrammatic shapes for the income part of the revolving fund. You can refer this. Interest earned on the revolving fund added back to the fund or credited to the income and expenditure and form the part of revenue, and depending upon who will decide the treatment, one or two, who will decide the treatment will be decided by the restriction laid down by the donor or the rules and regulation laid down by the concerned NGO. Now, what will the provision of audit? If the Smita, if the NGO is not registered in any provision, then they are free. none of the provision will become applicable. As the name suggests, non-government, they can act independently also. Clear? Provisions, the auditor of NGO registered under the Society Registration Act, important. You can get the question, true, false or MCQ. Pay attention students here. The auditor of the NGO registered under the society or the trust, the auditor is appointed by the management of that particular society. You can be asked the direct question or true, false or the MCQs. Who will appoint the auditor of the NGO? If the NGO is registered as a society or registered as a trust, then the answer will be by the management of particular society or the trust. The management of society or trust will be appointing the auditor of the NGO. And the second, if as registered, there were three parts: as a trust, as a society, or companies. So if the company is registered as a company, then the members of the company, pay attention here, I have highlighted the same as well. If the NGO is registered as a society or trust, then the management of the society or trust. And if the NGO registered as the Section 8 company, then the members of the particular company will appoint the auditor. Clear, student? Yes, Jay, there is an NGO is a wider term. Non-government organizations are the wider term. Their main objective is also include the awareness. They can work out of the country as well. Their scope is wider. Their constitution can be wider. And NPO basically for the charitable purpose. And these are the non-profit organizations. This is the basic difference. Srinivasan, that will depend upon the constitution in which these NGO are registered. We will be covering in the later. If a Foreign Contribution Act is applicable, then they are required to file the form for under this act. Clear, Srinivasan? Sham, you will be covering in the taxation part. What are the cash limits? What are the other limits describing the cash? 2000 rupees, and what are the other receipts part, 2 lakh rupees. So I am not going into that. You will be covering in detail in your taxation, because there are two provisions related to same, 2000 and 2 lakh. Okay, so I am moving further. Some of the statute you are required to note it down. You can get an MCQ or true false on this portion. Some of the statutes of the Companies Act, Foreign Contribution Act, Income Tax Act require the accounts of the NGO to be audited and submitted to the prescribed. Obviously, we already covered if the NGO is registered under the provision of any of, for example, in trust, in a society or the Section 8 company, then the provisions of that particular act will be leviable. In case of NGO, different statute, yeah, I think Srinivasan, your point has been covered here. In case NGO, different statutes have specified certain audit reports. For example, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act has prescribed the format and requires that the same furnished to the Ministry of Home Affairs. Foreign contribution, wherever NGO receives any contribution from the foreign, then this act will become applicable. And this is the ministry regarding the same, Ministry of Home Affairs. Then that NGO is required to file the report within the 60 days from the close of the financial year, that is by the 30th May. Clear, students? In case NGO, different statutes have specified different audit reports, like in trust, there can be different, society, there can be different, for the Companies Act, they are different. And there has one example has been given. For example, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, then the NGO is required to file the form within 60 days from the close of the financial year, that is the 30th May. Clear, students? Now this is the part of the planning. SA 300 is there for the planning part. SA 300 you will be covering in the later parts, the standards on auditing. The first point, while planning the audit of the, you can get the direct question, students. So many students were asking how the questions will be asked in the exam. So there can be direct, we have discussed earlier also. You can get a direct questions. For example, this can be direct questions, direct question in with regard to NGO. While planning the audit of of the NGO, the auditor may concentrate on the following points. So what can be the points with regard to planning the audit? These are the 10 points. The knowledge of the NGO's work, in which activity and NGOs is indulged, the mission and vision, their short-term goals, long-term goals, the area of operation, is it working in the in country or the foreign countries as well? This can, and the scope of the NGOs are very wide. They can work worldwide and globally as well, and environment in which they operate. Updating the knowledge, you can learn it. For example, first point is knowledge. The second point will be related to that. Updating the knowledge of the relevant statute. As I said, this can be in form of trust, society, companies act, foreign contribution act, income tax act. So the auditor is required to update himself with regard to provisions that is applicable to that NGO. Third point will be reviewing the legal form of organizations in society, trust, company, and memorandum association articles, rules, and regulation with regard to that. Clear, students? And a fourth point will be reviewing the NGO's organization chart. What is the organization chart? Basically, hierarchy. Who is the on the top position? Who is the treasurer? Who is handling the accounts? Who is the administrator? Who is the part of the managing committee of the NGO? So these are the hierarchy, so that auditor can check who is taking the decision. What is the organization chart for that particular NGO? The financial and administration manuals, how the financials are being managed, projects and program guideline, particular blood donation camp and a medical relief camp, any marathon. What are the programs done by the NGOs? Funding agency, from where NGOs are getting the fund. And we cover the Foreign Contribution Act 2010. They can get the contribution from the foreign as well. So who are the funding agencies? And the budgetary policies, if they are any maintained by the NGO budget requirement. What will be expenses for the same? Examination of minutes of the board meetings, committee. Minutes are for the decision taken in the meetings of that managing committee or the members. So auditor is required to examine the same. Reason I have already told you, because auditor cannot be available whole time at that particular entity. So he is required to examine the minutes, what decisions were taken by the members, by the managing committee during the year, what were the significant changes made. So auditor is required to examine the same minutes. Study the accounting system, procedures, internal control, internal check, already covered. Difference between internal control and internal check in the previous session. You can refer that class. Existing for the NGO and verify their applicability. Setting the materiality, SC 320. Material aspect in monetary as well as the other aspect will be considered while setting the level of the materiality. The nature and timing of the reports. Yes, Nivasan, definitely. Review the previous year's audit report. Clear, student? While planning the audit, auditor will concentrate on the following points, 10 points. Clear, students? Next, again, direct questions can be asked. Earlier was the while planning the audit. Students were required to read the question and the heading very, very carefully so that you can answer accordingly. The question we cover in this slide is the while planning the audit, and the another part we are doing the audit program for the audit of the NGO. Clear, students? Audit program. So we will be covering in the 4 parts. Audit program, liability side, asset, revenue and expenses. Receipt and expenses. 4 parts. First is the corpus. You can, in the other language, consider. You are required to write these terms only, but for your easy understanding, I am referring it as a capital. The contribution grant received toward the corpus to be vouched with a special reference. Any donation contribution received with a special condition is always form part of the corpus. So auditor is required to cross check what were those conditions from the letter. For example, Muhammad gave 5 lakh rupees with a special condition that my contribution will utilize only for this purpose. So he will After transferring 5 lakh rupees, he will also give a letter in writing or email, or that can be any written form, that my contribution, my donation will only be used for this purpose. So auditor will cross check the amount received with the letter, that what was the special condition imposed by the Muhammad while giving the donation to the NGO. So the auditor will special reference to the letter from the donor. The interest income to be checked with the investment register. We have read so many registered in the club, in the hospital, patient register, investment register, rent register, members register, stock register, investment register. So auditor is required to cross check the investment register and physical investment in hand. For example, FDR receipt and bond and share certificate. So auditor is required to check. We are auditing the capital part. So the first was the capital, and the second liability part, and the first part was the capital. Another one is the reserve. Reserves are also on the capital in the liability section. Reserves vouch the transfer from the project with the donor's letter. Mohammed gave 5 lakh rupees for particular program or particular asset, and NGO transfer 1 lakh rupees and utilized for specified purpose. And the NGO utilized for the current year only 1 lakh in that particular specified purpose. So auditor is required to check how much amount was transferred and for which purpose. And board resolution of the NGO also check the transfer. And another first auditor will check in the reserve whether particular specified amount was transferred. Clear? So the auditor is required to cross check the same. And general assets sold from the capital reserve to general reserve. These are the general entries passed by the management of an accountant of the NGOs. Earmarked fund. Student, what is the meaning of earmarked fund? Those are the funds which are used only for the specified purpose. Earmarking refers to a fund allocation practice in which an entity, government, or individual sets aside a determined amount of the fund for a specific goal. For example, in the case issue of the bonus share, capital redemption reserve, or capital reserve, share redemption reserve. So many reserves are being created. So if any reserve is created with a specified condition that this reserve will be used for that particular purpose only, that is called the earmarking. I am marking these funds that can be utilized only for this purpose. Check the requirement. Now, what is the responsibility of auditor? Auditor is required to check the requirement of the donors institution, board resolution, and rules and regulation for, and what were the scheme for earmarking. What was the purpose for which these reserves were created? Was this reserve utilized accordingly as per the regulations of the NGO or not? Clear, students? Projects and agency balances vouch the disbursement and expenditure as per the agreement with the donor for the balances. Now, for example, Suman gave us amount of rupees 2 lakh for preserving the environment, so that an NGO can can preserve the environment, or for doing the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, etc. So she gave us 2 lakh rupees. So auditor is required to check about the disbursement and expenditure. How much amount has been expended out of this 2 lakh rupees towards that particular activity specified by the Suman. So auditor is required to vouch the disbursement, whatever amounts has been expended as per the agreement with the donor. And what is the remaining balance? For example, after 2 lakh for the current year for the preserving the environment, only 50,000 rupees has been expended. So what should be the balance? 1.5 lakh. So auditor is required to cross check with the accounts. Clear, students? The loans, vouch the loans with the loan agreement and counterfoils already covered in the charitable institution. Counterfoils are the carbon copy of that particular receipt. Fixed assets, vouch all acquisitions, sales, disposal, also sale. Clear? Of assets, including the depreciation, fixed assets, also the what was the acquisition cost, whether depreciation has been charged, if yes, what was the rate, was the rate was correct or not. Also check the donor's letter agreement for the grant. In case of immovable property, check the title deed. Title deed is the registry of that particular immovable property. So auditor is required to check the same. Fixed assets, we are covering now asset. Liability portion we have covered. Now we are moving towards the assets portion. That is covered the fixed assets, and second is the investment. Check the investment register and the investment physically, ensuring that the investment are most important point. Students, highlight it here in your note, in your study material also. Investment are in name of the NGO and not in the name of any other person. Auditor is required to cross check, verify further disinvestment. Investment doing means investing into some securities or bonds, and disinvestment means selling and withdrawing the amount from the investment done. Clear? Investment means investing your money. Disinvestment means gaining back and disposing, selling that particular investment. For approval, investment and disinvestment for approval by the appropriate authority and bank accounts. Auditor, if any investment has been sold out, the auditor is required whether the particular fund has been received in the bank or not. Clear, students? We are covering the asset part. First 2 points we covered in asset, fixed assets and investment, and another one are cash in hand. Physically verify the cash in hand and impressed. What is the impressed balance, student? Do you know? Let me know in the chat box. What is the impressed balance at the close of the year, whether it tallies with the books of accounts. For example, on 31st March, NGO is having physical cash of rupees 1 lakh, whereas the books of accounts of NGO is showing 1.5 lakh. So auditor is required to tally the same. Clear, students? Bank balance. Check the bank reconciliation statement and ascertain the detail for old outstanding. NGO was required to receive this amount but haven't received till now. Unadjusted amount. Inventory. Verify the inventory in hand. Obtain the certificate from management. Already covered in last session. SA 580. Written representation from the management. Written representation from the management, whatever the information has been provided by the management with regard to any point, auditor is required to get it in the written form. That is called the written representation or certificate from the management. Program and project expenses, whatever the program and projects has been running by the NGO, auditor is required to check the same. Verify the agreement with the donor supporting the particular program or project, ascertaining the conditions with respect to undertaking of project, and accordingly in case of program involving contracts, ensure that the income tax is deducted and deposited and returns have been filed. Again, tedious point. If any expenses require the deduction of tax, you will be covering in taxation part. What will be the expenses in which deduction of TDS is must. If any TDS has been deducted, whether the same was deposited and return was filed by the NGO or not, auditor is required to check that. Perfect. Suman has correctly answered. Impressed, I haven't. Prabir, I am asking from you. Do you know the meaning of impressed balance? Suman has correctly answered. Students, impressed is basically advance given to particular employee for any petty expenses. These are not actual expenses till now, but these are the advances given for petty expenses. And that particular employee is required to give the list, whatever expenses he has made, only after that is recorded as the expense. But impressed balance is advance given for the particular expenses. Clear? Establishment expenses, verify that the provident fund, life insurance premium, employees in a state ESI and administration charges are deducted, contributed, deposited within the prescribed limit. Also check any office administrative expenses, stationery, traveling expense. Whatever the expenses have been done by the NGO is required to be checked by the auditor. These are the audit program. Firstly, we covered the liability section, corpus, reserve, earmarking of fund, project and agency balance and loans. After that, the fixed assets side, fixed assets, investment, cash, bank, and inventory, and then the expenses side, program and project expense, establishment expense, and now the remaining part is the receipt side, receipt part. Clear, student? Clear till now? Contributions and grant for project and programs. Check the agreement with the donor and grant letters, whatever the letter has been given by the donor, that my donation will be used for this specified purpose only. Funds are being received, have been accounted for. The NGO has received 5 lakh rupees. The first auditor will check whether these 5 lakh have been accounted or not. Check that all foreign contribution receipts are deposited in the foreign contribution bank. There is a separate bank account for the same. So auditor is required to cross check with the provision of that particular act, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Receipts from the fundraising program, whatever, so many activities are being organized like marathon, any camp, awareness programs to raise the fund so that they can donate or they can do their activities without any financial constraints. So how these receipts are being recorded, auditor is required to check that. Verify in detail the internal control. For example, there was a fundraising program by organizing a sports activity by the NGO. So auditor is required to check how these activities were being organized, what were the internal control process, who were receiving, who was the organizer for the same, who were managing the cash part, who were handling the expenses portion, how the receipts were being managed, whether via cash or by in the bank account. Was there any control on the same proper process or not implemented by the NGO managing committee? So auditor is required to check internal control system and ascertain who are the persons responsible for collection of the fund. Told you. Mode of receipt, bank or cash. Told you. Ensure that the collections are the counted and deposited in the bank daily. Whatever activities are being organized by NGO, whatever the receipts are made from that programs, that are being deposited in the bank on the daily basis. Membership fees. Check the fees received with the membership registrar. Ensure that the proper classification is made between the entrance fees, annual fees, and life membership fees. Reconcile the fees received with the member to be received during the year. What is the outstanding till now, and that is to be received. Student, pay attention here. Entrance fees is basically the one time during the entry that is required to be paid by the member. Annual fees, that is the fees required to be paid on annual basis. And life membership, that is given in lump sum amount at once for the whole life. That is auditors required to check how the accounting has been made for these three. Clear? Subscription, check with the subscription register and receipts issued. Reconcile the subscription with the printing and dispatch magazines. If any magazine, if any patrika, if any periodicals have been issued by the NGO, so auditor is required to check the list of the subscription received with the actual received and accounted for. Interest and dividend, check the interest and dividend receipts are receivable with the investment held during the year. And there was one more point for the investment. In the name of the NGO investment must be in the name of the NGOs. Clear, students, till now? NGO part? Let me know. Any query till now in the NGO part? Students, let me know. Clear? Kadambari, Prabhir, Suman, Srinivasan, Sham, Santosh, Neha, Vishali. Any query? Or I can proceed with the next topic. That is audit of a cooperative societies. Your study material page number 9.59. Okay. 9.59 is covering the audit of the cooperative society. We will be doing this portion. 9.59. Uh, Shivana, this is called the income and expenditure. The the term is used the income and expenditure, and instead of profit and loss, this is used the surplus and deficit. Cooperative also, students pay attention here. I hope the screen is visible to you. I am taking the general part from here. No, no, Harish. But if particular act required, like trust, society, or company, then they have to follow that. This is the common point. So, students, we are starting the cooperative society audit. Cooperative society is an autonomous, means independent association. What is the cooperative society? Cooperative, some persons come together and they want to form an entity or association of the persons rather, and they want to work for the upliftment or for the benefit of their group who are forming this cooperative society. So basically the purpose is the benefit of the members in the cooperative society. So the cooperative, also known as cooperative, helping the each others, is an autonomous association, that means independent of the person, united voluntarily, coming together at the wish of their own to meet their common economic, social, cultural needs and aspirations through the jointly owned enterprises. If particular area is facing issue regarding the agriculture, what will be the fertilizers for the same? I'm talking about the farmers particular group. That farmers can come together and they can work on this issue, from where they can get the fertilizer, from where they can learn the training, they can get the training so that they can use this in their agriculture fields, how they can sold their produces to the vast mass. So they can be common objectives for the same. They, all the farmers can come together for a particular area and they can form a cooperative society so that they can work for their upliftment and resolve the issues which we are facing in the common. So there is a specific act for the same, Cooperative Societies Act 1912, a central act. Again, as we read in the society and in the trust, there can be state act as well, and in the central act to hai. So the Cooperative Societies Act is the Central Act 1912, contains the fundamental law regarding the formation and working of the cooperative society in India, applicable to many states with or without the amendment. That means whatever the central act, that will be applicable. But if there is many particular state act, that the state act will be applicable to the same. In many states, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Orissa, cooperative societies are governed by the specific states act. An auditor, what is the auditor required to do? The auditor of the cooperative society should be familiar with the provisions of the particular act governing the society. Auditor is required to have knowledge, a detailed knowledge, what provisions are being imposed on the cooperative society, what are the provision for that respective state act as well. Clear, students? Cooperative society is a business organization with the special mode of doing business by pulling together all means and productions of the cooperative society. As I given you the example, farmers can come together and they can gain training about the fertilizers, how their produces can be sold at very good price, so that elimination of middlemen and exploitation from outside forces is reduced. Auditor, this is the main purpose of the cooperative society. Some group of person, association of persons come together, work for the upliftment, for the resolving the issue that they are facing in the common. Clear? A chartered, what is the responsibility of chartered accountant? A chartered accountant has to play a significant role in the development of the cooperative organization of the scientific line, and propose to give a true and fair view and guideline in the matter of the audit of the cooperative society. Apart from the auditor, some other functions also can be done by the CA: guidance in the accounting writing, installation of accounting system, internal audit, management accounting system. Management accounting is basically giving the advice on the accounting, how the business can run very in a very good way. Other than the accounting services, they can advise on the business running. Taxation part, auditor can do the other service, and a CA chartered accountant can give. However, the main focus is to give some guideline about the audit of cooperative society in general. The special features of audit will be applicable to all societies, will be considered first, and subsequent few special points with reference to audit program we will be covering. Clear the basics of the cooperative society, students? Now we are moving forward. What about the audit? Srinivasan, I have prepared the PPT on the same. Don't worry, I will be sharing the same today. Okay. But there was some basics part which we have covered from the your module. So what will be the audit requirement? The audit of cooperative society is governed by the section 17. Section 17 lays down the three conditions. When students pay attention here, three conditions. What are the three important points regard to audit of a cooperative society? First, who will appoint the auditor? What will be the major areas to cover, and what the other points? Section 17 of the Cooperative Societies Act 1912 governs the three major points, subsection 1, 2, and 3. The first is who will appoint the auditor. The registrar shall audit or causes to be audited. First point, the registrar will audit the accounts of the cooperative society, or the registrar can appoint some person authorized by him by general or special order in writing. The registrar shall audit. Students, you can get direct true or false questions on the same. You are required to pay attention. The registrar shall audit or cause to be audited by some person authorized by him. The first point will be the registrar can do the audit. The second, he can authorize some other persons as well by giving a special or general order in writing. Second point will be examination of the overdue debt. We will be covering in your special consideration. Pay attention here. Overdue debts, first point. The second, valuation. We will be covering in detail in the special consideration part in the later slide. Examination of the overdue debts. What is the overdue debts? The cooperative society was required to receive 1 lakh rupees till 31st March. But still that is not received by the cooperative society. That is the overdue, which was required to receive by particular date, but still that is not received. That is called the overdue. Due date has been passed. Second, valuation of the assets and the liability of the society. How the valuation will be done in the case of fixed assets, in the case of current assets, how the liabilities will be booked, what about the current liabilities, what about the contingent liabilities, we all be covering in detail in the later slides. This is all covered in the section 17 of the Cooperative Societies Act, Central Act 1912. Third point will be shall at all times have access to books of accounts. Obviously, auditor will be required to have access to the books of accounts and papers, securities of the society, and every officer of the society shall furnish such information in the regard to which transaction working of the society as the person making such inspection may require. Whatever information, books of accounts, paper, explanation is required by the auditor during the course of audit, then that particular person, cooperative society, is required to furnish the same to the auditor. Clear, student? That is all governed in the section 17 of the Cooperative Societies Act 1912. And who is the registrar? That registrar means a person appointed to perform the duties of registrar. Like in the case of registrars of company, registrars of firm, there is in society, there is a registrars of the societies that look after the matters of the cooperative societies. Now, the following points should be kept in mind in connection with the audit. In connection with the audit, these are not the special audit consideration, but these are in the connection with the auditor in the audit of the cooperative society. Qualification, who can be appointed as the General order means in general, and special with special order means there is a particular restriction or special conditions has been imposed. Srinivasan. General without any restriction or condition, and special order means if any condition restriction has been imposed in that order. That is the difference. A chartered accountant, understand you can get an MCQ, qualification of auditors. A CA with the meaning of CA Act 1949, chartered accountant can be appointed as the auditor. But pay attention here, there are two other persons also. Some of the state cooperative act have permitted the person holding government diploma in the cooperative society, cooperative accounts, or in the cooperative cooperation and accountancy. That person can also be appointed as the auditor. You can get MCQ questions on the same or the true false. Whether, for example, Mr. A has done a diploma in the cooperative accounts, whether the Mr. A can be appointed as the auditor of the cooperative society, true or false? Yes. For the cooperative society, this person can be appointed as the auditor. There is a different provision for the multi-state cooperative society. So you are required to pay attention here. Also, the third person, a person who has served as an auditor in the cooperative department, then that person can also be qualified as for being an auditor of that particular cooperative society. So there are three criteria. First, he can be chartered accountant or done any diploma in cooperative accounts, or a person auditor who is already an auditor in the cooperative department of the government sector. Qualification of the register. Qualifications of the auditor we are reading for B. And second point is the appointment of the auditor. Who will appoint the auditor? Already covered. Appointed by the registrar, already covered in the previous slide. Registrar shall audit, or he will appoint some person. So who will appoint? The registrar. The auditor of a cooperative society is appointed by the registrar of the cooperative societies, and the auditors so appointed. Government diploma means there is a diploma course on the cooperative account section other than chartered accountant. Particular course on the accounts of the cooperative societies. The auditors so appointed conduct the audit on the behalf of the registrar. Pay attention, students. Who will appoint the auditor? Registrar will appoint. The auditor will conduct the audit on the behalf of the registrar, and to whom he will submit the same. He will submit the same report to the registrar and to the society. The audit fees paid by the but the audit fees will be paid by the society. You can get again an MCQ question. Appointed by the registrar, the audit will submit the report to the registrar and to the society, but the audit fees will be paid by the society on the basis of statutory scale of fees, whatever the fees has been decided according to the cooperative society category. Govind, there will be sessions on the same. If any query regarding the exam pattern, you can get it resolved. Clear, students? Next is, first was the qualification, second was the appointment. What are we reading? What are we studying? We are studying the points kept in mind in connection with the audit. Not in the audit, in connection with the audit. Regarding the audit, we will be doing general points as well as the specific points. But for now, we are studying the in connection with the audit. So the third point is books of accounts. Under 43H of the Central Act, a state government can frame the rules prescribing the books of accounts. Important. You can get what the state requirement is for the same in order to maintain proper financial accounting record. These are very simple points now. In order to maintain proper financial accounting record, to disclose full financial result, the statutory mandatory provisions, but they are not conclusive. Means the state can prescribe what the accounts are required to be maintained. But if society wants to maintain some other records also for their convenience, societies are free to make that, to maintain that. The society is at liberty to maintain such additional record, already told you, according to the convenience. If society wants to maintain the debtors register, receivable, payables, for bank, the cash, separate register for the stock purchase and sold, issued, they can maintain as well. Ultimately, the financial transaction reflects a true and fair view, so they are depending upon that. So this is the books of accounts. What you are required to learn, the state government can frame rules. What books of accounts are required to be maintained by the society. But besides that, society can maintain the other records as well, whatever as per their convenience. The fourth point is restrictions on the shareholding. And the student, on all these points, you can get true, false, or MCQ questions. So pay attention. These are very simple, to the point. Only crux are required to be learned. Pay attention here. Section 5 of the Central Act. In the case of the society where liability of a member is limited, obviously almost in everywhere liability is limited as the company. No member of society other than registered society. Here we are talking about the unregistered society. So the member of unregistered society can hold maximum of the share capital of the society would not exceed 20% total number of shares. For example, there are 1,000 shares for the cooperative society. So 20% of that, or the amount in value 1,000 rupees, whichever is higher. This more than that member cannot hold the shares. There are two conditions, students, understand, there are two conditions. One is imposed on the number of shares. The number of shares can be maximum 20% of total number of shares. 20% of total number of shares. And second condition is imposed on the value of share. The value can be maximum 1,000 rupees and number of share can be maximum 20% of total share capital of the cooperative society. So you can get a true false that member can hold maximum up to 30% of the total share capital of the cooperative society. True or false? False. Member can hold only 20% of the total share capital of the cooperative society. That too in context to share number of shares and in the value maximum 1,000 rupees. Clear, students? The auditor of the cooperative society will be concerned with the provision so far to watch any. And what is the responsibility of auditor? Auditor need to cross check these conditions, these restrictions, whatever imposed by the state or the central act are being implemented accordingly, and no member is holding more than this limit. Now the second point is restriction on loan. Earlier we learned the restrictions on shareholding. There were two parts: in number of shares, 20% of number of shares, or in value 1,000, and in aggregate maximum, whatever the maximum of the two values. Now we are learning and studying the restrictions on loan. What is the restriction? Section 29 of the Central Act puts restriction on loan. It states that a registered society shall not make loan to any person other than a member. Society will only lend the loan to the member of the society. But there is a special sanction of the social registrar. The registered society may make a loan to another person. Again, true false question. Can a registered society make a loan to the another person? Answer will be no. But the question specify that the cooperative society want to make a loan to the another person and the registrar also sanctioned for the same, then answer will be yes. Okay. If the registrar is permitting for the same, then they can go ahead. Central government again can put restrictions on the same because they are respective state acts on the same. Restriction on borrowing. Is it clear till now, students? We are point the audit. Then what are the point in connection with the audit? Who will be auditor, qualification, who will appoint the auditor, what will be the books of accounts, and the restriction on shareholding. And now we learn about the restrictions on loan. You can get a true false MCQ pattern on the small points. These are very simple and easy to learn. You can learn it. And I am explaining with the example, so you can refer that. Restriction on the borrowing. Earlier was the restriction on loan. Now we are talking about the borrowing. So section 30 of the Central Act further puts restriction on the borrowing. A registered society shall accept loan and deposits from the persons who are not members subject to restrictions. Yes, they can accept, but there will be some restrictions depending upon the bylaws of the society. Whatever the rules and regulations are for the respective society and what are the acts and act says, so they can accept accordingly. There is no specifically limit given, so you can refer that. Appropriation of profit, that means whatever. Yes, I will be giving after finishing this so that we can continue. Continuity is not break. Okay, just in 5 minutes. Appropriation of the profit. What is the appropriation? That means distribution of the profit after creating the reserves and all. According to the section 33 of the Central Act, the prescribed percentage, there is not prescribed yet, but the society or the particular state can prescribe the profit should be transferred to reserve before distribution as dividend, bonus, whatever the percentage will be. So the society is required to appropriate the same. Clear, students? Investment, whatever the amount is holding the cooperative society where they will invest the same. According to section 32 of the Central Act, society may invest its fund in any of one or more of the following. Because the main purpose, main soul, main object of the cooperative society is mutual help. So they cannot invest their money in any so risky funds. So the Societies Act, the Central Act specify these limit these points. In that only they so cooperative society can invest their money. Okay. Yes, maximum of that, Manohar. Either 20% of the number of share or the 1000, whichever is higher. Whichever condition satisfy the first, that will be the maximum. So what are the main sections in which the investment, the income of the cooperative society they can invest? First is they can invest their money in the central or state cooperative bank. Students, pay attention here. You can get directly to the point questions because these are very to the point crux. So you are required to learn central and state cooperative bank. Second, in any securities specified in section 20 of the Indian Trust Act, in the shares, securities, debenture, but with limited liability. Underline, if you are keeping your study material with you, underline it. You can invest in the shares, bond, or any other society, but with the limited liability only. You can get a question true false. Whether the society can invest fund in the shares, you can tick yes, but you are required to pay attention the last word, whether it is having limited liability or not. If it is written is unlimited liability, then the answer will be false. Next will be in any cooperative bank other than the central in any cooperative bank. The first point was in only in the central and state cooperative bank. Students, pay attention. And the D point is saying in any cooperative bank other than the central and state cooperative bank, but as approved by the registrar on the specified terms and condition. If that other cooperative bank is approved, is sanctioned is by the registrar, then only you can invest their money there. Any other money permitted by the central or state government. Clear, students? The next point is the contribution. Again, direct question can be asked. According to section 34, registered society may, with the sanction of the registrar, contribute an amount not exceeding to 10% of net profit. Whatever, pay attention here, whatever the net profit it was, you are required to first transfer to reserve fund. Transfer to reserve fund, that will be the profit available for appropriation. And if any dividend or bonus is required to be given, then that or whatever the balance is remaining to the society, from that balance they can do the charity, but only maximum of the 10% of non-profit remaining after the compulsory transfer to the reserve for the charitable purpose. Only maximum to the 10%. What could be the reason, students? They are restricting the cooperative society from doing the charity. The reason is because their main purpose is to help each other. Cooperative, their main purpose, motto, soul of the cooperative society is to help the members to the one and association of the members. These are the association of the members. So the soul of this entity is to help each other. So they can, first of all, they need to keep in mind the profit, the benefits of their members. After that, they can do the charity, but there is a restriction on the same as well. Okay, students. 10th point will be investment of the reserve outside the business. Whatever the reserve fund have been created and from and where they can invest. So they can invest outside the business or utilization as the working capital. Reserves, students, reserves are created for the special purpose only. But the 10th point is saying whatever reserves have been created by the cooperative society, they can be used in the business, day-to-day business, or as a working capital. Working capital requirement is basically day-to-day affairs requirement. But what is the condition here? Some of the state provide that society may use. They can use the reserve fund in the business of the society as working capital. They can invest the same. Then can be used as some public purpose likely to promote the object of the society or not. But auditor is required to check whether there was any restriction on the investment of the reserve fund applicable to that state. If yes, auditor is required to cross check the same. Now, the last point of the connection points with the audit, contribution to education fund. Some of the state act provide that every education, again, true, false. Is it mandatory for cooperative society to contribute to education fund? Yes. Every society shall contribute. Shall means compulsory, mandatory, not any option. Contribute annually toward the education fund on the state, federal society, whatever the rate prescribed by that particular and society class as per the class of the society. Students, clear till now? Every cooperative society, answer me, every cooperative society is required and is mandatory. They shall contribute annually towards the education fund, but what will be the rate that can be prescribed as per the class of the society? This was our point 10 points with regard to the follow in connection with the audit. In connection with the audit. And students, clear till now? After that, we will be covering the spatial features of cooperative society. Spatial features. Any query, students? Okay. We are taking a 5-minute break. After that, we will be proceeding with the spatial features of cooperative society audit. Okay. Okay. 5-minute break. After we will be covering the spatial features. in we are starting the session. Students join fast. We are moving to next topic. Yes, Vaishali. If there any state act prevails, then the societies are required to register and apply the provision according to that act only with the registrar. And Shivana, that reports and documents will be depending upon the constitution, the legal form. If it is in the form of trust, then accordingly that provisions will become applicable in the company. Then the documents and the reports will depending upon the provisions of that act. In which act the NGO is being incorporated or registered. Clear, Shivana? Like we took an example, Foreign Contribution Act. A report is required to be submitted by the auditor within 60 days from the end of the financial year, that is by the 30th May. So, in which act that society is registered, is incorporated? What is the legal form of that particular society? So, the reports and the documents will depending upon that particular nature. So, we are moving to the next topic, that is the special features of the cooperative society. Till now, we covered the 10 points which was relating to in connection with the audit of the cooperative society. In connection. Now, we are covering the special features of the cooperative society. Okay, students? It is mandatory, Ashok, but the rate will be depend upon the in which class the society, what is the class of the society. So the prescribed rate will be accordingly vary, but the contribution is mandatory. And that rate can be differ as per the state rules. Special features of the cooperative audit. First is the examination of the overdue debts. 2 points which we covered in the starting. If you remember the second, section 17, subsection 2, examination of the overdue debts and the valuation. These 2 points will be covered in the audit. So we are covering it here in the detail as the special features. So what is the overdue debts? From the 6 months to 5 years and the more than 5 years. The cooperative society is required to classify the overdue debts. What are the overdue debts? Which were required to be collected till the due date, but it is still not collected. So the society is required to classify them in the two categories. The first categories will be the overdue from the 6 months to the 5 years and the more than the 5 years. Now, what is the purpose of such classification? Overdue debt, that means which were required to be collected by the cooperative society but still not collected. So how it will impact the society? Overdue debts have far-reaching consequences on the working of the credit society. Obviously, I was required to receive 10 lakh from the particular persons, but I haven't received that. This will affect the financial condition of the cooperative society. I won't be able to manage my work, my activities. I won't be able to invest into the new projects. I won't be able to do the business activities efficiently. So this is the most important point from the auditing point of view as well. Auditor is required to classify and pay attention on the overdue debts. It affects the working capital position. I will be facing the financial constraint if I am not receiving my dues within the time. A further analysis of these overdue debts from the viewpoint of the chances of recovery, most important point. Listen, students, if you get the direct questions, what is the auditor required to pay attention in the examination of overdue debts? First of all, you are required to write the classification, then how it affect the conditions of the cooperative society, and the third point we are covering it, chances of recovery. If the accounts are showing 10 lakh due, so auditor is required to ask from the managing committee whether is there any chance of receiving or not. If not, then they are required to treat it as a bad debts and proper provision for the doubtful debts are being made or not. If made, is it satisfactory or not? Because Srinivasan, there can be credit period, 3 to 6 months or whatever as per the criteria. So we are classifying by taking the general principle 6 months to 5 years and more than 5 years by considering the general credit limits. So the next point is first was the overdue debt. Next is the overdue interest. Overdue interest. I paid 1 lakh rupees as loan to others at the rate 10%. Pay attention, students, here. And that 10,000 interest I have treated as income on accrual basis. 10,000 income annually on accrual basis. But the due date has lapsed of receiving that 1 lakh principal amount. So the special feature point is here, overdue interest should be excluded from the interest. I have recorded this interest accrued income in the in the income expenditure section or P&L section. I have recorded this income as the interest income, interest accrued. And so what is the point saying? When the principal itself is outstanding, when there is very low chances of the recovery of the principal amount, then why are you booking the income of that interest when the principal itself cannot be recovered? So this is the logic behind that. If principal is still not there is not any chance for the recovery of the principal, then the cooperative society should exclude this interest accrued income from the P&L, from the income section of the profit and loss account. Clear, students? If the recovery of principal is in doubt, then the management committee, the cooperative society is required to deduct the income from the P&L section in the name of income accrued. The next point is classification of bad debts. Now there is an example is given. Is it clear, students, till now? A peculiar important feature regarding written of the bad debts. If the chances of the recovery is very negligible, then the management committee of that particular cooperative society is required to treat that debt as the bad debts. Who will decide the debt is the bad debt or is it still recoverable? So there is an example given, like in Maharashtra, it is the liability, it is the responsibility of auditor. It is very interesting to note, as per the Maharashtra Act rules, the bad debts can be written off only when they are certified by the auditor. The auditor will certify whether these debts can be recoverable or not. This is just an example as per the Maharashtra State Act. But what is the provision in the other states or in the general parlance? So the bad debts and irrecoverable losses before being written off against the bad debt fund should be certified bad irrecoverable by the auditor. But this is only condition in the Maharashtra state. But what about the other states? But if there is no such requirement exist in other state like Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, West Bengal, if that state does not specify any such requirement, then who will certify the debt as the irrecoverable or the bad debt? The managing committee of the society. Clear, student? There is a just example given that in case of Maharashtra, the auditor will certify that whether this amount can be recoverable or not. If it is not recoverable from the point of view of the auditor, then that will be treated as the bad debt. But this is only in the case of Maharashtra. But what about the other state? The managing committee will decide the same. Clear? The next point, valuation of assets. Again, from the first point, we covered two aspects in the starting. First was the overdue debts and the another was the valuation of assets and liability. These were considered as the most important point from the section 17 of the cooperative society. So first we covered overdue debts and another we are moving for the valuation, how the valuation be done of the assets and liability. Assets will cover the fixed assets and the current assets, and the liabilities will be general liabilities and the contingent liabilities. Regarding the valuation of assets, there are no specific provisions under the Act. Rules as such due regard shall be had general principles. Auditor will require to follow the general principles for the same. What will he follow about the states? And about the fixed assets, he will check the existence. What are we learning? Special consideration while valuation of the assets and liabilities of the cooperative society. So the auditor is required to check the existence, ownership, and valuation of the assets. Whether that particular asset exists, if we're talking about the building of the cooperative society, auditor is required to check whether these buildings exist, who is the owner of the building, and how the valuation is being made or not, and correctly or not. Now come to the valuation point. Should be valued. Fixed assets should be valued at the cost less the depreciation and any other incidental expenses. For example, registry, insurance, whatever the expenses that is directly related with the installation and acquiring that particular asset, that should be added to the acquisition cost of the asset. If any difference is found, then auditor is required to report on the same. Clear, student? Auditor is required to check the existence, ownership, and valuation of the assets, and how the valuation can be done. The cost of that particular asset minus depreciation, and if any incidental expenses that is directly related with that asset should be added to that. And what about the current asset? Current asset should be valued at cost or the market price, whichever is lower. Regarding the liabilities, the auditor should be seen that all liabilities are brought into the accounts. And what about the contingent liability? If the auditor is finding that there is any case or any other liability which can come, which can arise in future, then the cooperative society are required to take into the note. Clear, students? Till now, this is about the valuation part. The next, adherence to the cooperative principle, most important. The soul, the main objective of the cooperative society. What is the main objective? To help one another, to help each other. The auditor will have to ascertain in general how far the object of the cooperative organization is set up, have been achieved. As in our example, the farmers form and cooperative society for gaining the trainings, or how the fertilizers will be acquired, how they can sell their produces at a good handsome amount. So these were the objectives of the farmers cooperative society in our example. So whether those objects have been achieved or not, the assessment is not necessarily in terms of profit. Most important, you can get a true false on this. Cooperative societies profit can be object, but that too on the secondary part. The main objective of the cooperative society is to benefit, to eliminate the middlemen, to benefit the members of the society. So profit may not be the primary purpose, but that is the secondary. So auditor is required to check. But in the terms of extending the benefit to the members who have formed the society, like in our example, for extending the knowledge, trainings on the fertilizers and selling their produces, considered from the viewpoint of the social benefit, how far the sales could be affected at lower prices given in the example. Clear, students, till now? These are the most important points from the auditing point of view. The next point, observations of the provisions of the Act. The auditor of a cooperative society is required to point out the infringement with the provision. Violation. Infringement means violation, not following the particular provision of the Act. Clear, students? With the provision of the Cooperative Society Act and the rules and the bylaws, the financial implications of the such infringement should be properly assessed by the auditor, and they should be reported. Some of the state acts contain restriction on the payment of dividend. So basically, auditor is required to check the provisions according to applicable to that state. Next, verification of the members register, examination of their passbook. If the cooperative society is formed as the bank, so this is the relevant point. Examination of the entries in the members passbook, because this is formed to help the members, so members can give loan to one another. So what is the outstanding position? What is the balance amount regarding the same? So auditor is required to cross check the same. Examination of entries in the members passbook regarding the loan given, its repayment, confirmation of loan balances, very much important in the cooperative society organization to assure that entries in the books of the accounts are free from manipulation. Auditors required to cross check the same because in the cooperative society the basic principle is to help the members. So there will be many transactions of loan given receiving by the members among the members. So auditors required to check the outstanding balance, whether loan has been received, repaid accordingly or not from their the members register and their passbooks. Students, clear till now? Now if it is clear, I will be asking a question to you. Students, any query till now? Any query till now, students? Okay. Now tell me, what is the maximum rate for charity? What is the maximum percentage beyond which cooperative society cannot do the charity? What was the maximum percentage? Yes, okay, clear. What is the maximum percentage beyond which cooperative society cannot do the charity? 10%. Dito perfectly answered the same. 10%, but after transferring to the reserve fund. This was the catch. Perfect, Rito. Rituraj has done percentage is okay, but there one condition attached to that. 10% after transferring to reserve fund. Clear, students? This was a catch. 12, 20? No, 20. 20 was Martin. 20 was for the shareholding, maximum shareholding. Clear, Martin? And 12% Jay has get the 12%. 12 is not the answer. 10% after transferring to reserve fund is the correct answer. Now, most important, directly, there could be direct question on this. Yes, perfect, Kadambari. Most important. Learn it during the class with me. What is the special report? Students, pay attention here. There is another term also, special audit in case of multi-state cooperative society. But here in the normal cooperative society, there is a special report. So you have to read the question properly. Here we are learning about the special report. Who will be issuing this report to whom? What matters will be considered in this report? We are learning it here. Pay attention. Most important. If the auditor notices that there are some serious irregularities in the working of the society, irregularities means the working of the society is not as per their objective. This is not normal working, not proper working is going within the cooperative society. Then the auditor will report these matters to the registrar, in which report this matter will be considered. That report is called the special report. Students, pay attention here. If the auditor notices that there are some serious irregularities in the working of the society during the course of audit, then he will show these irregularities in the report. That report is called the special report. Now, what are the major points which are covered in this report, special report? First, personal profiteering. Learn it with me. Personal profiteering by the members. Keep in mind the basic objective, the motto and the soul of the cooperative society. Cooperative society was formed to benefit all the members, each other, to help each other. Clear, students? The main objective of the cooperative society was the to give the benefit for each and every member. But what if there is any personal profiteering? I am benefiting, cooperative society is benefiting to only the managing committee or any special one. So this is not fulfilling the objective of the cooperative society. This is only working towards the personal profiteering. Only one or two special persons are being benefited from the working of the cooperative society. So this matter the auditor will put in knowledge to the registrar in the special report. The second could be, these are the content. This could be the chances. Second will be the in case of fraud. If the auditor finds that there is a chances of fraud relating to expense. For example, if particular activity required the expense of 1 lakh rupees, pay attention student here, but the expenses have been in books it is recorded 100 and 1.5 lakh. So this could be chances of the fraud, embezzlement by the members in relating to purchase of property. They are showing the expenses more than that were actually expended. This is the condition example of the fraud. Third one will be mismanagement of the decisions, where the funds have to be invested of the society, from where they can purchase the raw material at very low cost. These are the management decisions. So mismanagement decisions are not taken properly by the managing committee. And the fourth one, cases of reckless advancing. Reckless means carelessly, without paying proper attention, careless advancing. Cooperative society is giving loan to any persons without checking the credibility of that particular persons. Even they are not asking for the repayment of the loan. So this is the reckless advancing. Okay, and a cooperative society is giving loan to anyone and not asking for the return or not getting the income on the same. So this is the reckless advancing. These are the 4 points, students. Students, these are the 4 points and 1, 2, 3, 4, which auditor need to report in his special report that is being submitted to the registrar. Now we will be covering in detail. Pay attention here, students. Special report we have covered in detail with the examples. Now we are going through the content which is given in the study material. During the course of audit, now pay attention, during the course of audit, the auditor notices that there are some serious, pay attention, serious irregularities. We are not talking about the minor irregularities. We are talking about the serious irregularities in the working of the society. He may report these special matters. What could be the matters? 4 we learned in the previous slide. Special matters to the registrar, drawing his specific attention, registrar's specific attention to these points. What will the registrar do after that? The registrar, on the receipt of such special report, may take necessary action against the society. Clear, students? The auditor will put in the attention of the registrar that these are the 4 areas in which irregularities. I have found the irregularities during the course of audit. Then the registrar can take the serious action against the society. And these 4 matters are the personal profiteering, and a detection of fraud and mismanagement, and the reckless advancing. Clear, students? Special report, most important. Learn personal profiteering. First was the personal profiteering by the member. Second was detection of fraud. Third was the mismanagement decisions. Fourth was the reckless, careless advancing. Clear, students, till now? The next point is audit classification. After the judgment of the overall performance of the society, the auditor has to award a class. As we see in the education fund percentage can be depending upon the class of the society. So the overall performance, the auditor will give a class after the auditing the books of accounts of the cooperative society. For example, we are taking the A, B, C class. These are just examples. So auditor will give the class to the society. The judgment is based on the criteria specified by the registrar. The registrar will specify to the auditor that this is the range between which you can give the class to the auditor, to the cooperative society. It may be noted that if any management of the society is not satisfied, for example, auditor gave the class B to the society, and the management of the society is not happy with that, so they can appeal to the registrar that look registrar, we are not satisfied with the class given by the auditor to us, kindly look into the matter. And the registrar may direct to review the audit classification. The auditor should be very careful while making the decisions about the class of the society. Students, after doing the audit, the auditor is required to give a class according to their working, their books of accounts maintenance, and all the matters of the during the course of auditor and audit, the auditor finds. So auditor will give a class to the society, and if the management of the society is not satisfied with this class, so they can appeal to the registrar. And last point, discussion of the draft with the draft audit report with the managing. You can students, you can get true false questions on the same. And why? Because just read it. Committee meeting to discuss the audit draft report, whatever after the audit, before finalizing the audit report. This is why this is use the audit draft report. Before finalizing the audit report, this is audit draft report. The audit report should never be finalized without discussion with the managing committee. Now here is the catch. Pay attention, student. Minor irregularities. You are required to pay attention what the question is asking. Only minor irregularities may got settled and rectified. The matters of policy should be discussed. Here, this is not written the major. Class, yes, Ashok, perfect. Only minor irregularities could be rectified after this discussion, but not the major, because the final decision will be on the auditor. Only the minor irregularities can be rectified after this meeting. Clear, students? This was cooperative society audit. Any doubts till now? Students, let me know. Otherwise, we will be moving to multi-state cooperative society. Again, very simple and interesting topic to cover. Students, let me know any doubts in the cooperative society. Not for the every matter. If it is related to their internal structure, then they can, and a managing committee will take the decisions. If it is relating to overall construction legal form, then they have to go to the registrar. Clear? Nagaraju. If it is their internal, then there is no need to go to registrar. If it is related to some other aspect, major aspect, then definitely they are required to go there. Okay. In last session, there was a okay. Yeah. Now we are moving overdue. No, Vaishali, no. Overdue means when a society has given loan to some person, but the due date has passed. For example, society has given 1 lakh to you, and the due date for the same was on 30th November. You were required to repay the same by the 30th November, but you haven't paid till now. That will be considered as the overdue. Due date has been lapsed. Profiteering, Jay, I didn't get profiteering. I think you were about to write me. Profiteering means I am getting the personal benefit from the activities of the cooperative society. Profiteering, I am getting the benefit myself and not giving the benefit to the society. Clear, Vishali and Jay? Okay. Multi-state cooperative society. The 3 points we will be covering here. Yes, Smita. Part, even though it is not a partnership deed is must. Registration of the partnership deed was optional. If you remember, we covered in the partnership section. The partnership deed is must, and but the registration for the same is optional. Yes, Hemlata, perfect. Major we are not going to discuss, or we can discuss, but we won't be in a rectifying. For example, if there is was many, if we consider the special report, major irregularity but whatever the major irregularities are found by the auditor during the course of audit of a cooperative society, then the auditor will submit his special report. Now, remember, we read in the special report whatever the major irregularities found by the auditor. This won't be discussed with the managing committee. Only minor, like you can rectify this, you can change the classification, you can improve your this section. Clear, Hemlata? Now moving to the next, multi-state cooperative society, we will be learning 3 points: audit, inquiry, and inspection of the multi-state cooperative society. What is the meaning, general meaning of inquiry? I am asking you something, answer me this thing. This is called the inquiry. Again, you will answer. I put on another question on the your previous answer. So this is the inquiry. Inspection is basically, I am asking you, like, please submit your notebook with me. I will check, and on after that checking, I will be asking, why you have written this? Why haven't you written that? You haven't covered this point, and you have covered this point wrongly. So this is called the inspection. Clear, students? Then differentiation between inquiry and inspection. And audit, we all know this is audit and independent examination. So multi-state cooperative, till now we were reading about the cooperative society. Now we are reading about the multi-state cooperative societies. And Act governing 2002 applies to cooperative society whose objects are not confined to one state. Till now we were covering, if the society is registered in Maharashtra, then Maharashtra State Act will be applicable. If it is in Rajasthan, then Rajasthan Act will be applicable. But what if the cooperative society is working in more than one state? Then this act will be applicable. Multi-state cooperative society. Yes, yes, Ruturaj. Vaishali, are you asking, or what? I didn't get your physical check and inventory. The Act contains the details provision regarding the registration, membership, and management of the societies, and the funds. Obviously, the funds of the multi-state cooperative society cannot be utilized for the any political purpose, because whether it's a simple cooperative society or a multi-state cooperative society, the basic sole motto, overall objective is to give benefit to the members, not to any other person, only to benefit for the persons or members. Clear, students? Now we are now moving to the books of accounts. Hemlata, that means as society can maintain the books of accounts, general like cash book, sales and purchase register, and these are the illustration list. These are only directives, and the state does not make any mandatory requirement. You are required to keep these books. You are not required to keep that books. So these are the direction. They are given the direction. You can maintain the books in this type of books, so that you can maintain your finance in a very good way. And the in a cooperative society, if find any necessity to maintain any other books also, like in our example, we took the debt, receivable, payable, stock register, member register. So they are free to maintain that also. But there is not any mandatory requirement. Only directions have been given. Clear, Hemlata? So books of accounts of the multi-state cooperative society, they can cover the all sums of money received and expended, because the major working is involved in this way. Sales and purchase, like in our example, if in case of fertilizers, from where they are being purchased, from where they are being sold, whatever the produces. Assets and liability, fixed assets, current assets, liability register, these are required to be maintained. If engaged in production and processing and manufacturing, then books relating to the utilization of the material and labor over relevant item. Clear, students? Whatever the required money, receipt and expended, whatever your receipt and expenditures, assets and liability, sales purchase you are doing, if you are manufacturing something, then records related to that. Again, if you remember, I told you in case of society who were qualified for being an auditor, there were three parts. If you remember, students, and keep your study material with you and look. Qualification in case of normal cooperative society, chartered accountant, any other person who has done diploma in cooperative accounts, or any other person who worked as in served as an auditor in the case of what is in the case of multi. A person who is chartered accountant within the meaning of the Chartered Accountant Act. Only you can get a true false. Students, pay attention and keep highlighting as I am saying you. Keep highlighting in your study material. Can appoint the auditor of the multi-state cooperative society. Only auditor CA, chartered accountant, not other diploma or any other person from the government department. Clear, students? Now, who are not eligible? And you will be covering this in detail in your company audit section. Have you covered that section, students? Who are not eligible for becoming an auditor of the cooperative society? First of all, remember only chartered accountant can do the audit of the uh, multi-state cooperative society. But the another question can be asked, who are the ineligible persons? Can the body corporate means who's any in different legal entities and legal rights and obligations. Body corporate. Any officer or employee of the multi-state cooperative society. This is the very common point. And can anybody tell me why? I will be waiting for your answers. Third point is person who is the member or is in the employment of the officer or employee of the multi-state cooperative society. A person who is indebted. Okay, okay. I will be covering in detail then. A person who is indebted to multi-state cooperative society who has given any guarantee directly or indirectly for any third person. So these 4 points B, C, and D are indicating one common point which from which we started our session. If you remember, students, why these 3 points are most important? These three persons cannot be appointed as an auditor of the multi-state cooperative society. Students, why? Perfect, perfect. Rituraj has answered. Manohar, very good, very good. Because they won't be independent to judge the working of the society. They are indulged in the activities of the society. And therefore, they cannot do the audit of the same. Clear? Officer and employee, they are having interest in the affairs of the multi-state cooperative society. In the same way, any person who is employed under these the person point number B or indebted. That means I am a chartered accountant, but I have a 5 lakh rupees debt in the cooperative society. I am indebted to that multi-state cooperative society. Yes, perfectly answered by all. Vaishali, Rituraj, Vanjana Ven, Sanjana Ven. Very good. Very good. So I am indebted. Even I am a CA. Okay, I am a CA. I am qualified under the point number 1, but I am become ineligible in point number second because I am indebted with the 5 lakh rupees. I am not independent. I am having interest in the cooperative society. So therefore also I am not able to do the audit. I am disqualified. Clear, student? And you are required to note it down, highlight only chartered accountant can do the audit for the same multi-state. We are talking about the multi-state cooperative society. But in general cooperative society, any other person having diploma or who has done the audit, the government cooperative society, then they can go ahead. Appointment, who will appointing the first auditor of multi-state cooperative society shall be appointed by the board managing committee within the 1 month from the date of registration of the society, and the auditor will hold the office until the conclusion of the first annual general meeting. If the board fails to exercise its power, then the auditor will be appointed in the general meeting. Clear, student? Yes, Rituraj. Yes. But this is not in the company audit. This is only for the multi-state cooperative society. First auditor will be appointed by the board within the 30 days. You are required to learn the time limits. You can get true, false or MCQs. The first auditor of the multi-state cooperative society will be appointed within the first month, 1 month from the date of registration. If the board fails to do so, then the auditor will be appointed in the general meeting. Clear? And what about the subsequent? Subsequent auditor will be appointed in the general meeting. This was about the appointment. First point about the multi-state cooperative society, we covered about the qualification, disqualification, and the another one was the appointment. This appointment part is covered under two parts, and a first auditor and the subsequent auditor. Now we are moving about the third, powers and duties of the auditor. What powers and duties will auditor have? According to this section, every auditor of multi-state cooperative society shall have the right to access the all the time the books of accounts, vouchers, and whether kept at head office or multi-state cooperative society or elsewhere, shall be entitled to require from the officer, inquire from the officer or the employee of the multi-state cooperative society such information and explanation. The first point will be books of account access. He can access. The second point will be all the information he can ask from the employee. He can inquire anything from the employee or the officers of the multi-state cooperative society. Besides that, what inquiry he will do. Second point was he can do inquiry. Now this is related to this. What inquiry he will do? He will do this inquiry. Whether loan and advances made by the multi-state cooperative society on the basis of security has been properly secured. An example, cooperative society has given 1 lakh rupees to Mr. Ajay. Whether society has taken any security for the same. In case Ajay fails to pay the 1 lakh rupees so that he can recover the amount of 1 lakh rupees from the security given by Mr. Ajay. Clear, students? Clear, students? Whether we will be covering Nancy. Whether the terms on which they have been made any non-prejudicial to the interest multi-state cooperative society or the member. Prejudicial means harmful. Whatever loan is being given to the another person by the multi-state cooperative society, that must be secured after the that must be given after proper security, and that loan transaction is not harmful for the working of the multi-state cooperative society. Prejudicial means harmful. Clear, student? Second point, he will inquiry whether the transaction of multi-state cooperative society which are represented mere book entry, that means actual transaction didn't took place. These are only book entries. Actual transaction never took place. So auditor is required to inquiry about the same. First was he is required to he will inquiry about the loan and advances. Second, he will ask about the expenses that are only book entry and not actually took place. Third, any personal expenses, are they charging their personal expenses to the revenue account of the multi-state cooperative society? Whether stated in the books of account paper multi-state cooperative society that the shares have been allotted for cash, whether cash has actually been received. If not, actually whether the position as stated in the account of books and balance sheet correct, regular, not misleading. Students, pay attention. We are reading multi-state cooperative society. What are the powers and duties of the auditor? So first point was the books of accounts, all-time access to books of accounts and voucher. The second point will be to inquiry from the officers and employee. What inquiry he will do? The first we covered the loan and advances. Second, about the expenses, not only by the book entry. Third, about the personal expense. And the fourth the point is saying, if any shares was allotted on behalf of cash, whether the cash was collected. If not, has been actually collected, whether the position stated in the books of accounts that this cash is about to received, this is the due balance. We have issued the shares, but we haven't received the cash balance yet. So auditor is required to inquiry on the same. Clear, students? Till now? Students, clear till now? I will be taking to 15 to 20 minutes more to cover this. And in the next session, we will be covering this case scenario, how the questions will be asked upon the multi-state cooperative society. There will be case scenario based questions. Clear, students? Okay. So you are required to go through thoroughly from your study material, whatever I am teaching you today. The next point about the content of audit report. The auditor shall make a report to the members of the multi-state cooperative society on the accounts examined by him, every balance sheet, profit and loss account, and any other documents required to part of the annexures, balance sheets. Nanishi, we will be covering, I told you, we will be covering, and the one part already covered. I was about to tell you, I was found in your query. First report, he will be making report to the members of the multi-state cooperative society apart from the registrar. Clear? And what will be the procedure? We will be covering in the later slides. Clear, Nancy? Okay. Every other document, annexures, and laid before the multi-state cooperative society in general meeting, auditor is required to report to the members of the multi-state cooperative society. Clear? The members. During his tenure, the report shall state whether, what will the auditor state in his audit report, whether his opinion to the best of information according to the explanation given to him, accounts give a true and fair view. What will the auditor state? That I was requiring these kind of information. These information were given to me, and after checking, after verifying, after examination of these information, I am come to conclusion and I have given my opinion, this opinion, whatever the opinion, on the books of accounts of the multi-state cooperative society. Now, and why this matter so required, and give a true fair view. Okay, whatever the opinion is given. Point number 8. In case of balance sheet, now we are covering in detail the state of the multi-state society affairs as at the date. We all know balance sheet is as on date, not for the year ended. Clear, students? Balance sheet is always as on date. But in the case of profit and loss account, the profit and loss account for the financial year, this is very common. I think we all know about this. Balance sheet is as on date, but the P&L, profit and loss account for the financial year. Clear, students? For the overall financial year. And balance sheet is always at as on date. What will the auditor report in the P&L section? He will state whether he has obtained all the information and explanation best to his knowledge and belief but necessary for the purpose. What is the keyword? He has obtained. Usko mil gayi. Whatever information he was requiring during the course of audit, he obtained the same. Second point, whether in his opinion proper books of accounts have been kept. So be books of accounts, they were sufficient and they were kept properly. So far appear to his examination, these books of accounts, returns adequate for the purpose of his audit have been received from branches. Whatever the books of accounts, other subsidiary records, documents he was requiring, that all books of accounts were given to him. Whether the report on the accounts of any branch audit and a branch office audited by a person other than, important point, we are talking about the multi-state cooperative society. So there could be chance that one branch is in Rajasthan, one is in Maharashtra, one is in Chhattisgarh. So this is point related to that only. Whether the report on the accounts of any branch, any other branch office audited by person other than multi-state cooperative society auditor. I have audited only the Rajasthan books of accounts, but Mr. B has audited the Chhattisgarh books of accounts branch. So the auditor has been forwarded that B Chhattisgarh state reports have been submitted to the A auditor. They will coordinate accordingly. Has been forwarded, and how he dealt with the same in the preparing the auditor's report. Clear? One state's books of accounts was audited by one and another state's by audited by another. So one person, one auditor will require the all the information from the another auditor to come to reach the proper overall conclusion. Whether the multi-state cooperative society's balance sheet, profit and loss account dealt by the report are in agreement. Important. Whatever the financial statements are saying, books of accounts must be saying the same. There should not be any chance that in books of accounts the cash balance is 1.5 lakh. In books of account the cash balance is 1.5 lakh, but in the financials cash account is showing 3.5 lakh. So the agreement must be there. Books of accounts, financials must be prepared properly, due diligently prepared. Financial statement must be prepared in agreement with the books of accounts. Clear, students? Clear till now? Tell me. The next point here, the most important topic begins. Earlier we read about the special reports, personal profiteering, fraud cases, mismanagement, and fourth one was reckless advancing. Remember, students, there were four important points: mismanagement, fraud cases, personal profiteering, and reckless advances by the cooperative society. This was in the case of special report. Now we are reading the special audit in the multi-state cooperative society. Now we are reading about the special audit. Don't be confused and highlight the same. Both are most important topics. Power of the central government to direct. The central government will direct, and in every time the central government can direct in each and every case? No, there is another catch. We will be covering in the later slide. When the central government can direct for a special audit. Who can direct? Central government can direct. But whether in each and every case? No, there is one more condition attached to it. We will be learning. So power of central government to direct the special audit in the certain cases. What are the cases? Affairs not managed in the accordance with the prudent commercial practices. Prudent means samajhdari. After applying your wisdom. Okay. The decisions, whatever the expenses were made, were not in the prudent decisions. Managed as it would cause injury interest to the industry or the business. The transactions were such that the management of cooperative society was multi-state cooperative society was in such a way that it was harmful for the industry, trade industry, or injury or interest to the other persons. Third one will be financial position is such it would endanger its insolvency. What was the insolvency? We covered in our LLP portion, if you remember, students. Insolvency is the position where multi-state cooperative society is not able to pay its dues. So in these three cases, the central government can direct the special audit. Now, the central government, this is the process for the same, the central government's order. The central government may at any time by the order direct the special audit of multi-state cooperative society for such a period or period as may be specified. The first point is central government will audit. Second point, appointment of the auditor. It may be appointed either by either a chartered accountant or multi-state cooperative society's auditor. Who has done the original audit of the cooperative society, he can also do the special audit, or any other chartered accountant can also be appointed for the same. Third, shareholding restriction. Now, the question which I asked, whether in any case in a central government direct? No, this is the catch. Shareholding restriction. The central government shall order for a special audit only if, student, highlight in your study material, only if the government or the state government, either by itself or jointly, 51% or more in the paid up share capital in such multi-state cooperative society, central government individually or with the or with the state government is holding more than 51% or more in the shares of the multi-state cooperative society. Clear, students? Then only in that case central government can direct for a special audit. What could be the reason for this restriction? Students, apply. This is very common. What could be the condition for this restriction? Next point. Meanwhile, I am going to next point. Special auditor's powers, duties, and report. The special auditor shall have the same powers and duties as it was given for inquiry, for having books of accounts, as we covered. special order shall instead making his report to the members of the multi-state cooperative society shall make a report to central government. Nancy. Okay. And there is another one point. First will be for the members and another, if it is case of the special audit, then another report will be forwarded to central government as well. The report of the special auditor shall include all the matters which we covered earlier, all these matters. Students, clear till now? Now, government must voting rights, because in this case, government is having substantial interest, students. Government is having more than 50% interest. Government is interested in this cooperative society. Therefore, the central government is directing for the special audit because the government is finding is there any irregularity, it can affect the overall revenue of the government. So that this is the reason. Next, actions by the central government. I will be taking your 15 minutes more, students, so that I can cover this topic. And in the next session, we will be starting with the case study on this multi-state cooperative society. And you are required to go through from your study material. Actions by the central government on the receipts on the report. In this case, an auditor submit his report to the central government after doing the special audit. The central on the receipt. Now, what will the central government do? On the receipt of the report of the special auditor, the central government may take such action on the report as it consider whatever the central government will find, will see it is necessary. It will consider necessary, so the central government take actions accordingly. However, if the central government does not take any action, you can get a question, students, pay attention here. What if the central government does not take any action on the report within 4 months? Within 4 months. If within 4 months central government doesn't take any action on the report submitted by the special auditor, from the date of the receipt, the government shall send to the multi-state cooperative society either a copy or relevant extract. Extract means a particular part, not the full, a particular part of the report with the comments. The central government will send some portion, some extract of the audit report, special audit report sent by the auditor to the central government. The central government will send a copy of that portion of the extract to the multi-state cooperative society with comment. Like, look, multi-state cooperative society, these are the sections, and on these sections we are adding these comments. You are required to update your management accordingly, according to our comments, and require the multi-state cooperative society either to circulate the copy of those extract to the members or have such copy and read before the multi-state cooperative society, so that every member of the cooperative society can get the knowledge that there was a special audit conducted on the multi-state cooperative society, and these are the comment given by the government on the same. Suman, we will be covering local authority and government entities audit, and remaining one small topic is left in the next session. And overall, all these sections have been covered. Clear, students? Expenses. Who will pay the expenses? The expenses and incidental to any special audit. What do you think? Who will be required to pay the expenses of the special audit? Tell me. Expenses, including the remuneration of the special auditor, shall be determined by the central government. Determined by the central government. Students, determined. And paid by the multi-state cooperative society. Note it down. Paid by the multi-state cooperative society, but determined by the central government. This is all about the audit of multi-state cooperative society. And the next session is inquiry, puchna, questioning on various aspects. And after getting the answer, again putting the query on that answer. When this in a central registrar, students pay attention. Central registrar. Rituraj, perfect. That's why I asked. So inquiry by the central registrar. When the central registrar on the request from who will request for the inquiry. Read the question heading carefully. Federal cooperative to which the multi-state cooperative society is affiliated. Federal means particular state-wise. Is it Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan? So what is the state? So who will request for the inquiry? The particular state. For example, there is a cooperative society in Rajasthan, in Maharashtra, and in Chhattisgarh. So Rajasthan Cooperative Society will request the central registrar to ask about the working of the overall multi-state cooperative society, a particular state. Yes, Nagaraju, very good. The particular one state can ask for the inquiry or the one creditor also, and not less than one third of the members of on the board. Clear? If there are 15 members on the board, then one third, minimum 5, must ask for the inquiry. From whom? From the central registrar. Students pay attention. From the central registrar. For the inquiry, what is going on in the, how is the working of the multi-state cooperative society? Is there any fraud, mismanagement or what? And third, who can apply for the request for the inquiry? Not less than 1/5 of the total number of members. In the second point, there was a members on board. Third point is total members. 1/5 of the total members. If total 20 members, so 1/5, 4 members can request for the inquiry. How the inquiry will be done? Hold an inquiry and direct some persons authorized by him and in order or in writing to hold the inquiry. Central registrar will authorize the same. Central registrar will authorize for the same. Opportunity of being heard. However, before holding any such inquiry, 15 days notice. Before holding any inquiry, 15 days notice must be given. Okay. And powers. You can be asked true false questions whether any opportunity of being heard is being given in case of inquiry. Yes, 15 days notice is given before the inquiry is made so that they can prepare accordingly. Powers. Central registrar or any person authorized for the inquiry have the powers. He shall have at the all reasonable times free access to books of accounts, securities, and whatever information he is requiring, that must be given to him. And notwithstanding anything in the bylaws specifying the period of notice, required the office to call or general meeting the society by giving a notice not less than 7 days at such time or place. He can inquiry from person by, he can call any person for the inquiry. First of all, he can access to books of accounts. Second, he can inquiry from any person by giving a notice not less than 7 days at such time and place at the headquarters of the society to consider such matter directed to him. Clear? He may summon any person who is reasonably believed by him to knowledge that this person has having knowledge for this. So this is the powers. Follow up, feedback lena, follow up lena. The central registrar shall within a period of 3 months, of the date of the receipt of the report, communicate the report of inquiry to multi-state cooperative society, the financial institution, if any, to which the society is affiliated, to the persons of authority, and any other inquiry who is needed the report of this inquiry. Within the 3 months after the inquiry has been done, the central registrar within a period of 3 months of the date of receipt of the communication of the audit of the inquiry report, he will communicate this inquiry report to the respective multi-state cooperative society. Clear, students? The last topic for the today, inspection of the multi-state cooperative society. When the inspection, the central registrar again. In the case of special audit, there was a central government. But in case of inquiry and inspection, students, please keep in mind there is a central registrar for the same. When the inspection can be invoked, again the federal cooperative to which multi-state cooperative society is affiliated, and not less than 1/3 of the members on board, and not less than 1/5 of the total number of members. Same. How? By general or special order. In the morning, I cleared the difference between the general and special order. In writing, behalf, inspect, direct any person authorized by him. In writing, in this behalf, make inspection and working accordingly. Opportunity of being heard, same, and not less than 15 days. Again, MCQ point of view, 15 days, true, false. There can be true, false as well. I will be giving you the case scenario in the next session. You are required to read it. Okay, students? 15 days is given, and opportunity of being heard is also given. Powers, same. All access to books of accounts and papers, stock and other property of the society in the event of the serious irregularities discovered during the inspection, and every officer member of multi-state cooperative society shall furnish such information with regard to the working of the, he can ask, he can inquiry, he can summon any person also. And inspection report, a copy of the report of the inspection under this section shall be communicated to the multi-state cooperative society within a period of 3 months. In earlier inquiry as well, there was a 3-month period from the date of completion of the inspection. Clear, student, till now? Any doubt with regard to audit, inspection, and inquiry in case of multi-state cooperative society? Any query, students? Audit, inspection, inquiry of multi-state cooperative society, or in any topic which we have covered till now. I hope you are going through, you are studying through these all topics from your study material as well, so that you can clear your doubts during the sessions. Students, any doubt till now? Till now, from the started, sole proprietor, partnership, LLP, educational institution, charitable institution, NGOs, hotel, hospitals, club, cinemas, everything, every word is clear, students? I hope you are going through your study material. We will be practicing more questions in the next session, and 3 topics, local authority and government audit, and 1 small topic of hire purchase and leasing is left. We will be covering with the practice questions and some MCQs and true false as well. And I will be uploading these PPT till now, whatever we have covered. General, Vaishali, general order means without any specifying criteria. Special order means in an order containing some conditions, some restrictions with the general clauses. These are the special orders with some special conditions. Any points, students? Any other queries? I think it will get updated. You will get to know in advance. Read to. Whenever it will be conducted, you will be get to know in advance. Don't worry about that. But your remaining portion will be covered surely. Don't worry about that. Your remaining portion will be covered, and we will be doing some practice also. Any other questions, or we can close for the session? 4th theory question in the study. We will be doing all these MCQs and true false and the questions from study material. Okay, if you are saying Rituraj, from the study material we will be taking surely. Besides that, we will be considering the MTP, RTP, and past year questions also. Important, everything is important, Jay. I think I have prepared students, whether you get the PPT or not, because I have graphically presented all the points. I have break the paragraph into the points, so I think it is quite easy to learn as well. I hope you get that. Whatever I have uploaded in PDF form, I have uploaded all the charts That will make it easier for you to learn as well after the understanding. Okay, I will check, Rituraj, what I think you are talking about the question number 4 about hotel. Okay, I will see and we will solve. Don't worry about that. Okay, Rituraj. Question number 4 from the study material. Okay. Any other query, students? Okay. So we are closing for today's session and we will be doing the remaining part in the next session. Thank you so much, students, for giving your extra time and do refer your study material till now, whatever we have covered. Thank you so much.